Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Respected Chairman and respected audience, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You have already heard the topic of my speech or presentation today. It's going to be what our youth can derive from the Holy Quran. It is a pretty vast topic, and I was thinking, how should I present it? Because everyone, depending on their level of understanding, can derive different levels of understanding from the Holy Quran. So I thought we have two main words in this topic here: the youth and the guidance. So that reminded me of some of the accounts of the prophets of Allah Ta'ala that are mentioned in the Holy Quran while they were young. They were not the prophets at that time, but they were young, and there are some accounts preserved in the Holy Quran. So I will take my presentation through those accounts, mentioning one by one in the light of each prophet of Allah Ta'ala. And I'll start with the sacrifice of Hazrat Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam. Hazrat Ibrahim used to see this dream of slaughtering his son. And one of the connotation of that dream is that how he left his family in the desert of Arabia in Mecca, and that's how he fulfilled the dream. But the interesting thing is, when Quran mentions this incident, it mentions that the Ishmael, who was old enough to work with him, so it seems that Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam was not very old. He was a young kid, or at the most a teenager, if you will. And look at the steadfastness that Hazrat Ismail is showing when his father is asking him about his slaughtering, and he's saying, "O my father, do as thou art commanded. Thou wilt find me, if Allah please, of those who are patient." And the other translation could be those who are steadfast. That's the important lesson that youth can derive from this incident mentioned in the Holy Quran, the conviction in the faith. See, in this society, we're faced by so many distractions. You know, a movie comes out, a book is written, media is saying one thing, we're small in number, the other party is large, and there are many accusations against Islam, against the Holy Prophet of Islam, and all of a sudden we think, we're vulnerable. Are we on the right path? We start questioning our faith. We start questioning whether the teaching that is given to us is the right teaching, just by the influence that we get from the outside. So the lesson we can learn from this little incident is, and there are many lessons you can derive, but one lesson is the steadfastness. When you believe in something, especially those of us who are young, in your school age, in your teenage, when you believe in something, believe with conviction. And stay true to what you believe. So that's the lesson we can derive from this incident of Holy Quran. Hazur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned that the heart of a mu'min is between the two fingers of Allah Ta'ala. He can twist it, on the right direction or the wrong direction. And he taught us a good prayer, Ya Muqallibal Qulubi, Sabbit Qalbi ala Dinika. That, oh, Master of the hearts, keep our hearts straight. The lesson is, let's keep praying and try to be steadfast on what we believe, and don't get distracted by little things, nuances that surround us. It's difficult. It's very difficult. You're in the masjid environment right now. When you go to work, when we go to school, we are surrounded by other distractions. That's where the prayer comes into play. And we also need to be vigilant all the time that if we lose the ground of our conviction in our faith, then everything is downhill from there. Next incident is the incident from the life of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. The story of Hazrat Yusuf goes like his brothers had enmity. They took him for a recreation, and then they dropped him in a well, and then a caravan came. They saw this kid in the well. They took him, and when the brothers found out, they sold Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam to this caravan, and then he ended up in one of the families in the Egyptian household. And he was a young lad at that time. As he grew up, the Quran mentions the incident and say, when he attained his age of strength, we granted him with judgment and knowledge. And then the person who brought him to his house, he told his wife that take care of him and he might bring some benefits to us in the future. And then the Quran talks about how the woman in the house, she tried to seduce Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, as it's mentioned that he was strong, and to some accounts it is also mentioned that he was good looking. So the point here is that she tried to seduce him, and the response of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam is that I seek refuge with Allah. He's my Lord. He has made me stay with you honorable. Verily, the wrongdoers never prosper. So what can youth derive from this little incident mentioned in the Holy Quran? Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam was not a prophet of God at that time when this is mentioned, and how he tackled the situation. This is very similar to today's world if we think about it. You're sitting alone in your room, you have the internet, you're alone at your school where there's no Ahmadi, your parents are not there, and you're vulnerable. You're at work location and your buddies ask you to come for a happy hour. There's no Ahmadi, there's no Murabbi Sahib there, and that's the challenge. So we face these challenges every day in our life, especially the youth, given the young age and the temptations and all the drive that we have in the young age. So the lesson to learn from this little incident is that, again, be vigilant about the distractions, the temptations that are around you, and seek refuge of Allah Ta'ala when some situation arises. And always, always be very careful, especially when we're alone, when no one is watching over us, because Allah Ta'ala is at the end of the day watching over us, and it's very important that we keep that little thing in mind and learn from this incident that's mentioned in the Holy Quran to our benefit. The next incident I want to mention is from the life of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, when he grew up, he was very well built, a strong person, and he was very passionate towards his people as well. And one of the people from his tribe called upon him when he was having a fight with another guy, and Musa went there and he helped him, and he punched the guy and accidentally killed him. And the authorities were coming after him, so he had to leave the area because wrong allegations were launched against him. And now this guy who has apparently, from a worldly standpoint, I mean, it's a small hijrat for him. He's outside of his town and he's in a state of fear. He's in a state of loss, in a sense that he doesn't know where his life is going to go. He doesn't know whether he's going to find any work, whether he's going to find any home to live in. And then now he's young, so he needs to get married and start a family. And he sees two women who are trying to water their flock, and he helps them and then sits in the shade and says this little prayer. Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. That, oh Allah Ta'ala, I'm in a need of whatever good you provide to me. And then Quran takes that prayer, and immediately, it's the beauty of the Quran, how it presents a scenario in front of you, and then gives the solution. So now that the story goes on, and in the Holy Quran it's mentioned that those two women got back and they mentioned it to their father. Their father invited Hazrat Musa, and he eventually gave one of his daughters to Hazrat Musa, and he married her. And he also provided for him. Hazrat Musa stayed at his house, and there was a covenant that for a certain time he will stay with them. And look how a person who had apparently nothing, and he prays this, and then all of a sudden Allah Ta'ala provides so many things for him. He provides a house for him, he provides a provision, a sort of job from today's standpoint for him. He provides a wife for him. So from nothing to pretty much everything that a person would need. So similarly, what our youth can derive from this situation? We sometimes get into this position as well. You have struggle. For example, some of us may have struggled when they come to this country. Now it's difficult to get into college, to pay the loans, to get educated. And then sometimes when you do get educated, it's difficult to find a job, especially in this economic downturn. There are difficulties. People are not finding jobs easily. Some of us who are in the age of getting married, they need a good spouse, and we heard about choosing a good spouse yesterday. So all of us can practically be in this situation. And there's a simple prayer in the Holy Quran, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. And if we continue to do this prayer, Allah Ta'ala knows what's best for us, and Allah Ta'ala will provide that for us if we continue to do these prayers. So the idea is that all the prayers mentioned in the Holy Quran, there are other prayers. The prayer that I read in the beginning of my presentation was also a prayer of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam that he asked Allah Ta'ala before he went for his mission. There are prayers for increasing knowledge. There are prayers for your parents. There are prayers for increasing your wisdom, increasing your wealth, and to provide you security and all. So reading those prayers inside from the Holy Quran is a key takeaway from this little incident that's mentioned in the Holy Quran. Then Hazrat Luqman alayhi salam, there's a whole chapter on Hazrat Luqman alayhi salam, and in the middle of the chapter, Allah Ta'ala talks about how Hazrat Luqman alayhi salam gave advice to his son. And there is a series of advice that he gave to his son, not to do shirk, keep praying, and establish the salat. He also mentioned about gratitude to parents. That's something which our youth can derive from it. There is a prayer mentioned in the Holy Quran, Rabbi irhamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. Is that, oh Allah Ta'ala, grant mercy on my parents the way they brought me up, with passion and with compassion. Then Hazrat Luqman alayhi salam talks about to enjoin good and forbid evil. This is an important advice that he gave to his son, because in our society, if we think about it, the company of the righteous is really the path for success. If we make it our motto in our life, that no matter what we say or no matter what we do, if the principle behind that is that we are enjoying good and forbidding evil, a lot of our acts and our words can be corrected. Backbiting is mentioned in the Holy Quran. Deceiving others is mentioned in the Holy Quran. Foul talk is mentioned in the Holy Quran. So all those things, if we keep in mind that we need to enjoin good, and whatever comes out of our mouth or whatever is shown through our actions is good, and we shun everything or try to stay away from anything that is bad. Hazrat Masih alayhi salatu wasalam, in his writings once, he's written that नेकी को सवार कर अदा करो और बदी को बेजार होकर तर्क करो. The instruction is that for the good, you should do it with full heart, and you should decorate your good deeds. And for the bad deeds, you should you should neglect them and look away from anything that is bad or evil. Then Allah Ta'ala talks about in the same Surah Luqman, Hazrat Luqman advised his son that Allah loves not any arrogant boaster. a very simple advice, but it's very hard to follow sometimes. Sometimes when we get educated, when we get a good status in life, we think that this is end all be all. We're good. Nobody can question us. Nobody can point fingers at us. And we get into this zone of this egoistic mentality that we are the best and we're second to none. So that's very bad. It will hurt our relationship with others. And to be honest with you, even in corporate America, it is mentioned that everyone is individual and they should strive for the best. They should go up and be and believe in themselves and get a bright future. But even if in this culture, if you try to be arrogant, it's not a likable attribute. People will know. People won't say it in front of you, but on your back, people will say, this guy is not good. Why? Because of that arrogant feature. So that arrogance, and that arrogance can come into us in any way. It could be due to our status, due to our wealth. Just because my knowledge can bring arrogance to some people that I know more than you. Promised Messiah ﷺ in the same book Kashti Nuh mentioned about that even if you know more than your brother, then don't boast it. Don't try to let them down that they don't know anything. So that's a lesson for youth that we can learn. And finally, I'll close with this one incident of Hazrat Noah's son that is mentioned in the Holy Quran. Now, the previous examples I mentioned were positive examples. This is one example that's an alarming one that we need to keep in mind. The example is that Hazrat, as you all know, Hazrat Nuh was building this ark because of that big flood that was going to come to people of his time as a wrath of Allah Ta'ala. And his son, he is not one of the believers. Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam calls upon him and say, come and sit on my boat, so you're one of the believers. And this guy says, no, I'm climbing up the mountain and I will go to the highest point of the mountain and water cannot touch me. The same sort of arrogance that I talked about in the past. He thought that climbing up the corporate ladder, climbing up, having a big house, driving a Lexus or Mercedes or BMW, whatever, I'm aloof to any calamity from Allah Ta'ala. When Allah Ta'ala decides to bring you down, no one can protect against that. So that's an important lesson our youth needs to understand, is that no matter how high you go, you need to be humble. You need to be to bow in front of Allah Ta'ala and pray, continue to pray in front of Him, that even though you have attained some height, it is through Him and not something of your own doing. So the point here is that eventually then Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Holy Quran that even though he was at the highest point of that rock or mountain, whatever he climbed upon, the wave came and he was one of the people who got drowned. So there are various lessons like these. There are many other accounts mentioned in the Holy Quran that talks about various incidents of the prophets of Allah Ta'ala, various other incidents of nations that got wiped out. There are various prayers mentioned in the Holy Quran that youth can derive from this book. Allah Ta'ala says in the Holy Quran repeatedly that why don't you think? Why don't you ponder? Why don't you understand? Allah Ta'ala presents a case, Allah Ta'ala gives you a teaching, a guidance, and then it says, think over it, ponder. And that's a lesson for us, that when we go back from this conference, it is very good to hear speeches and hear people talk, but the real understanding and the real guidance will come when we actually devote some time on a personal level and open the Holy Quran and see. And it could be bits and pieces. For example, you open the Holy Quran, you read a verse, and then you start exploring it. You go to alislam.org on the Quran section, you look at the 5-volume commentary and say what that commentary says for that one ayat. You look at, watch MTA and the Taleem-ul-Qur'an classes of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala, I have found them of tremendous knowledge. And every one of us should try to go back and see, what guidance Khalifatul Masih attained from it, and then he is delivering to us. So these are some of the thoughts that I had. It's a vast topic. Won't be able to cover it in 15-20 minutes. I'm at my 20-minute mark right now. But my humble submission to including myself to everyone is that these conferences are a great avenue to spur our interest, to pique our interest in learning about the Holy Quran. Please do so when you get back to your homes, because the real learnings comes from when you personally devote some time to understand the Holy Quran. And as Promised Messiah mentioned in one of his beautiful couplets, that Kamar hai chand auron ka, hamara chand Quran hai. That the moon, the physical moon, is for others, but our real moon is the Holy Quran. That's beloved to us, and we get guidance from it. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.